Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm going to make the contribution about the sixth lecture of the Foundations of Esotericism that I've postponed a little bit for everyone who's been doing the reading to catch up with the reading. So hopefully by now everyone who is following this has at least read the first 6 lectures. As I've said before, it becomes very difficult to comment on any of these lectures because each sentence, each paragraph has quite a thick set of ideas or a dense set of ideas together through which we could spend many hours just exploring some of the singular ideas. So I'm going to try and pick out a couple of themes from this lecture 6. I've given it the title, The 7 Ranks of Being. In this lecture, some of the themes that Steiner touches upon is once again some of the themes that we've been following, which is that of evolution, of how the warm-blooded animals come about and how the cold-blooded animals come about, and the various aspects of as the human being evolves through the evolution of consciousness, and the astral body is joined into us, our soul body is joined into us in a certain point in evolution. We have this job of refining that astral body between our sort of more desire nature and the swings towards the balancing of that through the action of karma, so that we can become more and more able to be creative beings in the world. Now, coexistent with the human being, Rudolf Steiner says there are 7 ranks of being, which that we must clearly differentiate between being receptive and those which are creative. So there are 7 ranks, for want of a better word, or 7 layers of being that participate in the course of evolution of consciousness. And we could start with those which are created. We could say they are those which are the creative gods. In different cultures, these are obviously given different kinds of mythologies with which we can approach them. Some of them have the creator gods in anthropomorphic form, and some have them in animistic forms. Either way, we can see that there are gods who have in their own evolution come to the point where they can breathe out something, and that this evolution of our solar system or our part of the universe has a particular task. And we will see that this task has various names as it unfolds through various stages of evolution. It is one form of evolution. It's not the only one in the universes, but it is specific to what we are doing. And these gods also then work as creative beings right through to these lower forms. So he names these beings as the gods, and then also has slightly different beings. I'm just trying to find the list here that I have in front of me. That we have the gods, and then we have the Pitris or the fathers, and the Nirmanakayas and the Bodhisattvas. These are all still Sanskrit names that the various Eastern philosophies have given the names to the various ranks of consciousness through which consciousness, life and form can come into expression in the world. It's the 5th and 6th and the 7th ranks that are quite important to us, because he gives then the 5th rank is the pure human beings, and the 6th rank are the human beings, us. And then the 7th are the elemental beings. It's a little bit on these 3 ranks that I'd like to give some form of commentary. He talks about the elemental beings as being a receptive rank, the human beings ourselves as being a sort of a balance between the receptive rank and a creative rank, and the pure human beings are still belonging with the other 4 layers, the gods, the Pitris, the fathers, the Nirmanakayas and the Bodhisattvas, and the 5th rank, the pure human beings, that are the creative beings that are still contain the imaginations of which the evolution of consciousness takes place within our universe. And I'd like to reiterate that for Steiner, we have to see that these ideas are not anthropocentric. The human being is a focal point of the evolution of consciousness at this point, but that if we want to have a broadened understanding of what it means to be in the evolution of our Earth in the universe, or in our solar system in the universe, that we would have to see that the human beings form a particular focal point, and that the animals, the trees, the plants, and the stones around us belong to also what we would call the human consciousness. But with this particular lecture, we also see that they are the pure human beings and higher hierarchies that also belong to what it means to be purely human. That there is a huge intentionality in the evolutionary process of consciousness about bringing something into being through a process whereby a refinement takes place. And this we've been following a little bit from the point of view that the human being has, as time goes by, refined parts of the soul, parts of that which is now part of our human being, and in so doing requires a conversation with the animal world around it. That at first we have to press out a part of us in order to ennoble another part within ourselves, and then through conversation with what the animal represents, we reincorporate what is in the animal world, especially the warm-blooded animals, and can bring that about into a higher evolutionary process. And so the higher creative beings that bring about the imaginations and the dreamings of evolution of consciousness, as well as the lower forms of consciousness or the other forms of consciousness, all focus around what we could say the meaning of this earthly evolution, which I think in Steiner's terms he would say is what it means to be human evolution. So the human being isn't just the Homo sapien that walks upon the earth. Each rank of creative being, each rank of receptive being that works in a different way around the human beings are all part of the evolution of our present solar system, of which the beings on the earth are the most material in form. And if we then look at this particular two ranks that he talks about, he calls the pure human beings and the human beings, and then the seventh rank of the elemental beings. So there are beings of an elemental nature that hold forms. So for example, one of the examples that he brings in this lecture is that when the craftiness of the astral body needed to be put out for a refinement, the fox came into being. And that aspect of craftiness and cleverness that came about through the fox, an elemental being, so a being that is bound up with the manifestation of consciousness and life and form in the world around us, the fox came into being, and they're receptive to these ideas. Every time we as human beings also make something, these levels of what Steiner calls these elemental beings come about. So when a person discovered a cup or makes a piece of art, an elemental being comes with the idea together with the material that a person puts together and is put into place. And so it's always been that we need these elemental beings to be creative in the world. And then the human being, that's us who are listening to this video and other people on the earth, we have a certain amount of receptivity still of ideas from the higher worlds, from the gods and the Manakayas and the Bodhisattvas that guide humanity. We still receive this into our soul and into our spirit, and at night time when we sleep, some of these ideas are seeded more deeply in us so that we can then become creative in the world around us. But there are, in a way, two kinds of human beings, and if one wanted to, there are other places where we can go and read or study some more of how Steiner understands this. But he talks about how there are, that at a certain point in evolution there were human beings that became more deeply connected to the physical matter that is us. We have gone more deeply into the material world, and that there were other beings of the same rank of consciousness as us who remained more involved in the sun forces. And so we could say that humanity at this point lives, there are certain consciousnesses of humanity, some live within the sun being and work still as a primal humanity, as an inspiring kind of as prototypes of what it means to be human beings. These express themselves as we could say as angelic beings who try to work into us, to inspire us as prototypes, as archetypes that give us our human meaning. And then there are those of us who as human beings are trying to wrestle, trying to engage with more deeply with the material world. It's something new in the evolution of the universes, that a being has gone so deeply into the material world, and through this guidance of the pure human beings, the Namanakayas, the Bodhisattvas, the Pitris, and the creative gods, are trying to be able to bring about something new out of the individuation of each human being. So this is something that's quite new in the world evolution, that human beings have now gone to the point where each one of us has become so individuated that we can once again take the whole world around us back into us, and through that become more and more creative. If we take the consequences of Steiner's thinking, each human being eventually will be able to bring forth from themselves another universe. So that's quite a powerful idea, that what we are going through now will eventually, in the ongoing evolution of consciousness over billions and billions of years, will eventually become something that we can also dream and create in the world. So at this point, the human beings are in two ranks. We are the same beings, we have the same constitution, or the same aspects within us. We have a physical body, we've got a life body, we have a soul body, we've got a spirit body. Some of us have not dropped so deeply into the material world and work as pure human beings out of the sun forces and the angelic forces, that as the prototypes and the archetypes of what it means to be human, and try to guide, as so to say, a more spiritualized form of the human being. Those of us who have chosen to go ever deeper into matter, and to, through matter, become individuated, separated from each other, and now need to go the journey of reincorporating, re-socializing, regathering. We could almost say that all the challenges that we meet in the world of the physical world, the illnesses, the social strife that we meet, are all hurdles through which we can meet each other and learn to reincorporate and develop these higher aspects of what it means to be truly human. So that's some of the ideas that I've had in reading these. There are some lectures. There's a lecture cycle that's called the Gospel of St. John, and its relationship to the other Gospels. In the third lecture, he does actually go into that in some detail about these two beings, what we call the human being and the pure human beings. In other traditions, this was known as the Adam Katmon, the beings who had not yet gone, so to say, through the process through which we had become more and more material in our nature. So again, this is something that possibly confronts some of the more traditional, or the latterly traditional ideas of a more material idea of evolution, where we have originated as very simple organisms and become ever more and more complex, with which we then eventually become conscious. But it's true that there is consciousness, and the human being, as we've perfected more and more the material body, other parts of creation have in a way coalesced out of us, but are still deeply part of us. And some of that coalescence is more and more deeply into the animal and the plant world and the stone world, and some of that coalescence is a more spiritual, light-filled part of our humanity, where beings can work and help us bring about the reintegration of what it is has been separated. I think I may have said things like the fact that there is at the moment we are in a part of the process of evolution where we're in a cosmos of dualities, but that duality is a bit like the chemical process of salts, where you react the salt to get an acid and a base, and the impurities fall out, and then when the acid and the bases react and you get a salt again, it's been purified of its impurities. A little bit that is how we are as human beings. And the duality, one form of duality is of course male-female, notwithstanding all the genders that are appearing, that are changing that rapidly as part of the purification process. But the big duality that we're working with is that of the human beings who are more physical, and the human beings who are more the pure human beings that work as the archetypes and the prototypes out of the sun realms, helping us reintegrate the worlds of dualities into a higher unity. So we could say that the process of the evolution of consciousness is to create oneness, is to create a higher unity, but that many parts of us are already in a higher integration and not in a process of duality. The duality is really only a way for us to go through this alchemical process of refinement. So those are some of the ideas that came from lecture 6. As I said, there are obviously many more ideas in each lecture, but that's where I thought it might be quite useful for us to try and understand these 7 ranks of beings that work in the dreaming of our solar system. So the creator gods, the Pitris, the fathers, the Nirmanakayas and the Bodhisattvas, and then the pure humans, the human beings, and then the receptive beings of the elemental world that help us bring about a transformation through our creations. Wish you well. I'll put the link up to lecture 7 this afternoon, and hopefully I'll be back on Friday with a commentary to that. Go well. See you all. Bye.